Welcome, everyone, to Insights and Innovations. I'm Adrienne Mansfield, the co-founder of ADage Marketing Group, and I'm here today with the President and Vice President of Strategic Dining Services, a disruptor in the senior living dining industry. And we're going to get started with a few questions, and then we'll leave the comments open at the end. So, David, could you tell us a little bit about how Strategic Dining Services defines dining excellence?
Well, I think before we get to dining excellence, our first focus would be to define the dining experience. Right? So
Right.
what does that look like? And then how can we build excellence from that? So what is the dining experience? It starts before you even get to the door, right? It's the way the menus were written when you received them last week. It was the story that was told about this week's special dinner. There are ways we set the tone and understand and start evaluating the experience long before we even set foot in the dining room or at the table. So the second step is when we do arrive in that dining room or dining area, we get our second sense of what that experience is going to be. So we start getting smells and sights and sounds of the dining experience. And without knowing it, that starts setting the tone to what we're working towards is that excellence in the experience part, but what does it look like? And so when we walk through what excellence looks like, we start with that process of what does the experience look like, and put yourself in the place of a resident and walk through the entire experience. And so by the time you're seated, the menu, a server comes over, what are they wearing? How are they wearing it? What have they said to you? And I will share this one explanation that I share with almost all the staff. When you walk into a senior living community and you sit down at the table and a server comes over who is professional, well-dressed, energetic, and says to you, oh my gosh, before you even look at the menu tonight, I have to tell you about the salmon special. They just got the salmon in this morning. It's pan-seared, golden brown, and served with an avocado mango salsa. Okay, I don't even like salmon, and I loved this dish.
Yes.
When the food arrives and it's beautiful, it's as described, and the salsa is vibrant and gorgeous, and the garnish, is that meal going to be great? Before you even put a fork in it, I guarantee you, they're going to love it. Because we did all of the parts of the resident experience, the dining experience, before the meal arrived to create excellence in our outcome. So, I mean, that's a long answer to what is excellence, but excellence is understanding every dynamic step of the experience and addressing them with just as much value. What does your utility worker bring to that resident experience? Well, what about the look and feel of that dining room? Who took care of it? Who set it up? Are the plates perfect and beautifully cleaned? Is the glassware without spots? Is it safe? Is it healthy? That's a utility person's, fundamental impact on that resident experience. Take all those together and start evaluating each one, and that's how we'll build excellence.
Absolutely, breaking it down into the user experience. We talk about that from a digital perspective a lot with today's consumer. But, at Adage Marketing Group, our entire team is in alignment on the marketing experience, the sales experience, the operational experience. And I know that Strategic Dining Services has a real operational impact. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
In terms of the operational impact that we have, it's because we provide a hands-on support service. The reality of what we do in the hospitality experience and the food and culinary experience is that it can't be called in. The easiest thing that we do is write a policies and procedures manual or write a menu or some recipes. But quite honestly, if the three of us took the same recipe into private kitchens and came out an hour later, we'd have 3 different dishes.
You're absolutely right. It's that standardization of the experience, setting that bar.
Correct. So for us, it is really that, that executional hands-on piece. And how do we get in there and really show and define through explanation, but experience. Let me walk you through this. Here's how it looks, here's how it feels, and here's what we should be looking at the end of the day. Without that, Go
Can
ahead.
you help us understand what you look for when you assess a community? What are the things that you're looking for when you're doing that initial assessment and setting up a support partnership?
Yeah, so not unlike the resident experience, right? We walk ourselves through the dining room, through the kitchen in a way that says, what is that outcome going to look like? So as we walk in and we see things, maybe a little disrupted, a little out of place, the dining room not too neat, the kitchen not too neat, we recognize immediately there's an organizational challenge to it.
Mhm.
But then every community and every partner that we have has completely different challenges, which
Right.
is why our model and what we do works so well, because we don't have a cookie cutter. We don't have a solution in mind before we walk into a community. We try to understand what that dynamic is. So it's our experience and professionalism over time, and we've been in hundreds and hundreds of communities. We can identify and see where those strengths or weaknesses are, and then start developing a plan to build against them. But we go in and we watch the whole service aspect. We sit through an evening of service and watch the dining room and see how customers flow, how those servers handle themselves. We watch food both coming out of the kitchen, but food arriving at the back door of the kitchen. How
Yeah.
is that handled? How
Yeah.
does it move? Reporting details. What's their financial obligation, and are they meeting it? And does that financial obligation match to the needs of the community? In
Hmm.
other words, are we at the right budget expectations to match with what our rental rates are, what our cost of our community? So can we meet or exceed residents' expectations with the budget we've been provided?
Mhm.
Given that we acknowledge that, yes, we can. Now, are we managing that and using the residents' funds appropriately and in their best interest?
That's excellent. So you said everyone has different challenges that you come across. I know Rhonda and David, you were recently out at the conferences Leading Age. What were some of the things that you heard?
Well, right now, the thing that you hear from everyone are labor challenges, right? It's the quality of the team. But that's always been the case. The quality of your outcome is absolutely directly related to the quality of the people that you have.
Mhm.
And I still see that as the biggest challenge. Now, clients will come to us and say, our biggest challenge is we don't have very good menus. Well, we will provide that. That's great. But without the people behind those menus
Mhm.
and the marketing to tell a story about those menus and the purchasing people to buy the right products to supply those, without all of those other moving parts in place, menus are rarely the solution. But they're part of it, right?
Mhm.
A big part of it. But we really see the labor piece as the biggest challenge, and one that again, our dynamic helps because at the end of the day, we're a training and teaching company. So we get in there and take somebody who has a certain level of operational experience, and we can multiply it. We can really give them the tools in order to take their game up to the next notch, and now to execute on those same menus at a different level.
That's excellent. And we talked a little bit earlier about operational alignment. And I find that on the marketing side, the front end of the experience, if your sales and marketing team is doing a really good job of getting out there and telling your story, they're often going to have people at the community to dine. And if that experience on the sales and marketing side isn't up to par, right, that's a huge issue operationally when we're trying to drive revenue and census. And then when those visitors who haven't contacted us yet are seeing reviews on Facebook or Google that are negative about the dining experience, I find that they're less inclined to come in and schedule a lunch tour. So do you find that there's an operational and kind of sales component to what you guys do for communities?
There's no question
Yes.
about it. And I'll let Rhonda tell you her benchmark for measuring the caliber of the dining program.
Excellent.
Right. Whenever we start working with a client, on our first visit, we often will ask the sales and marketing team, do you use dining to close sales? Meaning, do you know that when you invite a family or prospective resident in for lunch or dinner, that will seal the deal? Do you feel confident in that? And if we don't hear a resounding, oh, absolutely yes, we know there's work to be done. And also not just work to be done, but building the team cohesiveness, because dining and sales and programming should be really working so closely together to really show off the commitment to dining as it affects the residents' daily lives. The dining experience is, also very social, and it's what they look forward to. But also any other interactions in the community, whether it be from programming or the sales team. If you're having an event, it should be something that, visitors have not seen anywhere else. It is the quality of the food and the presentation. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to break the budget, but that presentation and how you talk about your commitment to quality and hospitality is so important. So when we work with the community, we work with our dining team, of course, but also sales and marketing for messaging and, really talking about what sets us apart as a community and make that their story.
And it's critical that the stories align. Many times that's what we'll see, is that you've got a sales and marketing team with some form of messaging which relates to a dining experience, and you get to the community and it's get them fed, get them out approach. Those two things don't deliver, and you're not going to be successful over time. And that's to Rhonda's point, is that the vision has to be consistent. So now we're looking at leadership at the top of the ladder, saying, here's our vision, and let's discuss it and communicate it so that we're clear from activities and programming and dining and what our culture, our community is going to be, so that we can tell that story. And if it's true, that storytelling is potent and powerful.
It is. I noticed when you mentioned earlier about the local salmon that came in today. I've worked with communities who had that phenomenal dining story behind their vendors, behind their producers and growers. Especially in rural markets, there's value in having those local connections, to your point, from a cost savings, but also from a storytelling. And I'll never forget a grand opening that I attended and coordinated in Atlanta, Georgia, that was a strategic dining services grand opening. I think it was Chef Tony. It was quite some time ago. And it was remarkable. It was remarkable. And it wasn't just because I thought so as a partner. I genuinely had been to, at that point, about a dozen grand openings that year. And the food was far and away the best part of the experience. It was the highlight. So there's definitely a sales and marketing component to what you guys offer. And I think from a disruption perspective, if we could circle back to that, you mentioned building the teams. And I find that being a teaching and learning organization like you are, that's a little bit different than the business model that you typically see in senior living dining. Is that correct?
Oh, there's no question about it. We work more in a as you do, a transparent partnership with our clients. We first understand what the goals are, where the shortfalls are, what the opportunities are, and build a plan around that. And I can tell you that, having done this for many years now, the most surprising thing is when we come into a community and start affecting change and helping to build and develop a team, is who steps up and who doesn't. And I can tell you that the greatest thing that we do is to go into a community where we've been told by leadership, we don't have anyone who can do this job. We need to clean house. We're just not there. And all of a sudden we have 3 or 4 people who take their game up. And it's a reminder of how many people, and particularly in our industry and on the dining side of it, want to do a great job.
Yes.
They want to be proud of what they do. They've just never been given the skill set to execute at that level. We come from an industry who, for a generation of time, was perfectly satisfied with mediocrity. With look, we fed them, they got nutritious food, let's move on. Those days are gone. It's, look, if my mom's going to move here, what's she going to do and what's she going to eat? Those are the 2 variables now. The care is assumed. The assumption is she'll be very well cared for. She'll be safe. She'll be warm. It's a beautiful place. Those are all a given. The only variables from a marketing perspective is, what is she going to do and what is she going to eat? And we have the chance to tell that story, and people want to be part of something great. Everyone does, even if they get pushed to get there, at the end of the day, they look back and say, hey, here's what we do. The
Right.
person you were trying to get to do that only 6 months ago is now bragging to someone else about, no, at our place, we would never do that. And that's, to us, what keeps us coming back day in and day out, is to see folks who have this potential, but have never been given the tools or the opportunity to execute and be held accountable. And that's another piece of what we provide. And people like accountability. And that's kind of a dirty word, but people like to know the score. Look, if I do this, I'm doing a great job, right? And if I don't do that, I know I'm not doing a great job. I want to know what my parameters are, and that's what we help set and define for the community.
Yeah, if you identify what those key predictive indicators are, you guys are able to find those gems that are already there. And I find it interesting too, when there's this constant churn conversation, the impact that kind of energy would have, that empowerment of a single individual would have on their employee referral rates for incoming staff, and also the retention rates of those communities who take the time to invest in those rock stars.
Oh, absolutely. From everything from the onboarding process to the support and skill set process. And it's self-fulfilling, by the way. No talented cook wants to be part of a kitchen that's just opening boxes and cooking frozen lasagna. So if you go down that path, then you tend to attract people who are fine with that anyway. So now not only do you have a product that's shortcuts, you've attracted a team that appreciates shortcuts. And it's a difficult process to break.
From a hiring perspective, I read an article that Generation Z, which are really like the younger than millennials, their generation lived through the 2007 collapse. They've watched their parents struggle, right? And so they're all looking for maybe not the lifetime company approach, but somewhere that has a growth track for them and can communicate that to them, that gives them a chance to kind of invest and willingly invest in somewhere that they can see a future. Do you guys have that experience?
I think we see that often, and just a story to go along with that. The communities, from a service standpoint, that can tell the story to a young person. Listen, you don't have any experience in dining or in serving, but we're going to give you that skill set. And if you'll stay here for the next 2 years, through your high school years, when you leave here, you will be a skilled server. You will have, the tools to do whatever you want, which is go to college and make a lot of money part-time doing what you want. Summers, now you can go into an industry that has can generate high levels of gratuity income and make a good living for yourself, or put some money away. So the trade-off is, you give us your time, we'll give you the skill set, and that's something you can use for a lifetime. When that messaging is upfront and open, we tend to attract really good, talented people who just want the chance to learn, and they will stick around for a while because they understand the progression and the opportunity.
That's fantastic. And it builds a team of like-minded people. Like you said, when you set the bar low, you're going to set the bar low. So when it comes to the organizational impact of what strategic dining does, Rhonda, you had shared kind of the sales metric. When you go back to the community, then how do they share with you that they feel they've been successful from a dining turnaround perspective?
Well, when they have the feedback from their families and prospects that they've never seen that being served, and never had salmon with that fantastic mango sauce, and that is instant gratification, right? And the dining room looks great, and the whole hospitality culture starts to evolve, and that's something that a lot of times people can't put their finger on, but they can feel it and understand that there is a conscious effort to create the experience through hospitality. And so, the sales and marketing teams also, as they, try to build their events, they realize that now their events are the talk of the town, right? So people come and attend the events, and that's all they can talk about for a while because they have never seen a display, of fresh sushi or just even how it's maybe butler passed hors d'oeuvres at a senior living community. And so the expectations are raised, and the factor that there is a focus on the dining experience in everything that's being presented starts to, have its own voice.
That is
And I can tell you one of the most powerful measurables from that perspective is referral rates.
Okay.
If you see the change in your resident referrals, you can tie it directly to that change in the hospitality atmosphere in that community. Because when people start saying we love it here, they're not talking about the bricks and the mortar. They're not talking about the carpeting. They're talking about the experience is why they love it here. And of the experience, 75% of that is dining, any way you draw it up, because that also drives the culture of other things. But I think that's one of the best benchmarks. And when we see clients come to us and they see a measurable change in referral rates in the last year opposed to a year prior, we know that we're having an impact.
Also, one other point I'd love to make is if they're inviting their friends and family in for meals and they're actually coming. Because how many times do you hear, a family member coming to visit and the resident inviting them to stay, and they never do. It's like, oh, it's dinner time, but we have other plans, right? So when you start to see family and friends coming because they love the food too, that's great. Is huge.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Rhonda, because the two things that came to my mind were in constant conversations for 2022 planning, onboarding of new residents and staff have been coming up as trends for our clients, and also that post-purchase experience. So, if you look at a lot of the traditional sales training models, they have a few stages, but there's nothing after the sale. And we find, especially with what we learned during COVID, is that our current residents, our current employees, those are our best sources for new referrals. So what we want to do is start to cultivate that process immediately. And what I mean by resident onboarding is those welcome parties, right? Have your bridge club in. And then from a resident referral perspective, to David's point, if you have a kitchen that has a signature item and you have a team that is on the ready to do a fantastic lunch for 2 or 3 friends that dropped by, that's going to increase your resident referral outcomes exponentially.
Yes.
And it makes the sales and marketing team's job a lot easier.
Yes, it does.
And the sales and marketing team also has a responsibility to drive the relationship with dining and programming to make sure their message is consistent with delivery. We see many times that everybody's going in different directions. Maybe we're on the same page in terms of vision, but how we're going about it is differently. And that's not the road to success. The sales and marketing teams have to come to the dining teams and say, hey, here's what we're trying to accomplish. What do you think? Oh, wait, I have a great idea for that. And instead, we see communities where the sales and marketing team walks into the kitchen and drops a menu and a plan for tomorrow's luncheon. Here's what I want.
Right. It has to be a collaboration. It's funny you mentioned that. I was actually working with one of your team members on a 3rd anniversary celebration, and it was very much a collaborative effort. We ended up putting together, it was a 3rd anniversary, and I had suggested a 3 set of, I think, hot chocolates or something. And the chef came back with this brilliant idea of 3 specific pieces. One was a soup, one was a drink, one was a mix for popcorn. It was just a phenomenal idea. And the whole team came together to brand it and put it out there. It was a great experience.
So, and again, to the point is you communicated the expected outcome. Here's what we're trying to do, right? Yeah. This is what we want to accomplish. And when you put the team together and you give them the direction, I'm constantly amazed at the creativity and the ideas that come out of that group when they are involved. And I tell you, more than a half dozen times, I've had the director of facilities and maintenance add something to an event that was a game changer. That, oh, you know what I could do? Like, wow, that would be fabulous. So it's communicating that desired outcome and then letting the team build on it. But also, I think it's key too, at the end of the day, we have to be accountable to these ideas and creativity and execution. So what's the measurable on the other end of it? What do you really want to accomplish? Is it 6 tours that you're building? All right, let's put that in writing. See, here's what we want to get out of this. If we only get 4, what could we have done better? How could we have gotten more? If we get 15, we're really happy with what we did. Let's do that again.
Yes.
And then what are we doing with those 15? Was there an expectation not only get 15 tours, but we would love to get a deposit out of today, because I know half the people who are going to be here for this event are already closed, are interested. The idea here is something to make them say, oh, I want to get there sooner rather than later.
Yes. And having the chef come out during lunch when you have a super hot tour, that's always a great move. I really do think that Strategic Dining Services does a phenomenal job of aligning not just the dining services and the logistics behind it, but the user experience from end to end when it comes to the sales team taking out pieces, when it comes to the marketing team promoting events, and that resident experience that allows them to generate those referrals.
Well, again, it's the executional piece. If you don't have that at your core, we'll occasionally see an event, a sales and marketing event, with your residents walking around going, wow, why don't we ever see this stuff?
No, you don't want
I've lived here 3 years. You've never fed us that. And, that's a mistake, right? We've done things wrong. The messaging isn't right. And what we're trying to do is not true to our core. But instead, the residents should walk by and go, oh yeah, we had that last week. They spoil us here. We get things like that all the time, right?
Absolutely.
So,
well, and I think you do a phenomenal job of identifying the user experience and that resident experience being key. And I want to circle back to something that Rhonda said about being disruptive. There's a great quote by Heather Simmons that said, "Those who disrupt industries change behavior, alter economics, and transform lives." And the idea of setting a bar in every market that you guys touch is transformative. And I think your business model from the traditional, like you had said, boxes and cans, is game changing for the resident experience and also for setting the bar for operators.
Well, we appreciate that gets noticed, because at the end of the day, when we have our weekly staff calls, we say, okay, what did we do today that changed or had an impact on the resident experience tomorrow?
And that is transformational leadership.
How are we addressing it day to day? Because there is something we could do. It may be small, but tomorrow, if we do it again, and the next day we do it again, we're going to feel the impact.
Absolutely. Small changes, huge impact.
Yes.
Indeed.
Thank you both so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We are collectors of stories, and we always want to curate whatever we can to share with others. So thank you both for sharing your insights.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.